Good morning. Today is Sunday. It is Chof
Aleph, isn't it?
Chof Aleph.
Chof Aleph, I think. The last is
Chof Aleph. Shvat Tovshin Ayin Tes. We are in Teres Menachem Sefer Mamorim. Tovshin Yud Gimel in the Mamar of Yud Beis Tammuz Tovshin Yud Gimel Dibra Maschil Leman Daas. We are on page Kuf Peites. At the bottom, Ois Hey. We're about to begin Ois Hey, chapter 5. The Rebbe is discussing here the idea of Havaya Hu Elikim, that Havaya and Elikim, which represent Oiris and Kalim, the lights and the energies, despite the fact that on the surface they look like they're opposites, this is a giving force and this is a withholding force. Nonetheless, they're all one. The Rebbe explained it up until this point at the level of Shamayim. The pasuk says, "Ki havaya hu elikim bashamayim mimal v'la'oretz mitachas," and the heavens above and the earth below. Shamayim, the Rebbe says, is a reference to Atzilus. So he explained how in Atzilus Havaya and Elikim are one, the Eir and the Kli, the light and the vessel, the energy and the vessel, the revealing force and the withholding force are one. And now he's going on to explain Bashamayim Mimal, at the level of Bashamayim Mimal, the heavens above, or above the heavens, which is a reference to the level of Keser, the crown, or the transcendent level, which is beyond Atzilus, the world of emanation. Kuf Peites, page Kuf Peites at the bottom, Ois Hei. In addition to the concept that Havaya is Elikim Bashamayim, in the heavens, which means, in other words, in the lights and in the vessels of the world of emanation, which was the subject of explanation. Up until this point, there is also the concept of Havaya is Elikim, the lights and the vessels are one, where Bashamayim Imal, the heavens above. What does it mean in the heavens above? At the top of page Kuf Tzadik, L'mayla Matzilus, even beyond the world of emanation. So in the world of emanation, we have Oiris and Kelim, lights and vessels. Beyond Atzilus, it is Shezehu Inyan Sheirish Oiris v'Sheirish HaKelim. In the realm of the root of the lights and the root of the vessels. From where the Oiris and Kelim of Atzilus come from. From where they come. Shemehem boim ha'eres v'kelim b'atzilus. From where the lights and vessels of Atzilus come. What's the word? What's the pshat? Says the Rebbe. The l'chura in a move on to explain this concept. The Rebbe said, first of all, it seems something is not understood. What's not understood? How is it possible that the lights of Atzilus should come into being? How should they exist? What's the problem? Why shouldn't they exist? So if you remember, we mentioned earlier that there are two opinions in Oiris. We know that a sphira is made up of an Eir and a Kli, right? And each sphira has its distinct character. There's Chochmah, there's Bina, there's Daas, right? And the discussion was, where does that Shiur, where does that character begin? Where does it come from? Does it already exist within the Eir, within the light? And the vessel pronounces it even more? Or does that character come from the Keli, from the vessel, and the light is pure? Right? So the Rebbe says, what's the problem with Eiros of Atzilus? Why is there an issue?
You really clarified that a little.
1 second. Yeah, so we said there are two opinions. So now the Rebbe is discussing, the Rebbe is asking, how do Eiros of Atzilus come into being altogether? What's the problem? So the Rebbe says that according to all opinions, according to both opinions, whether the lights are pure, or whether the lights are already formed in some character, have some character, some form of character, before the Kelim, right? Whether they're pure or Pshutim or Mitziyarim, there is an issue with Eiros of Atzilus coming into being. What's the issue? He says, certainly according to the opinion that the lights already are not pure, meaning to say they have some character even before they fuse with the Keli, with the vessel. There must be something, he says, that should affect. From pure oneness, there should come about something that's not pure. If the source of the Eir is Achdus Pshuta, is simple unity, it's pure, it's unformed, there's no fragmentation or delineated, differentiation or the identifiable character in any way. It's pure. So how do you get to something that's pure, something that's formed? That's according to the opinion that the lights are poshut. I'm sorry, that the lights are not poshut. I mean, already mitzuya. So if you say that the character of the sphere already begins where? In the Eir of Atzilus, in the light of Atzilus. Where does that come from? Where does the Eir of Atzilus come from? The light of Atzilus, where does it emanate from? From its source, which is beyond Atzilus, from Keser. What's there? Over there, there's certainly Achdus Pshuta, pure unity. How do you get all of a sudden a delineated divine energy that has some kind of a character? Where does it come from?
But this is after the cut, yes?
Oh yeah,
Cool.
certainly.
After the cut. So
Yeah.
therefore, I mean, this is going back to what we talked about, the differentiation between should I create and should I not create.
Well, those are the 10 steps
Yeah.
that you and I, that was discussed there, but that doesn't, I don't think he's addressing that issue here.
Well, we'll see where it goes.
What are you referring to?
We learned this from Ginsburg. We talk about how to get a separation between Ches and Gvura. Why should there be differentiation? And that goes, he said, that goes back to all the way to David said, should I create a world or should I not create? And the should I create is the
So he's
should I not create is the Gvura holding, and that's the origin of the two strands.
Correct. Okay, but here he's talking at a lower level. Here he's talking even la'achar tzimtzum. He's talking beyond Atzilus, right? So there's Atzilus and beyond Atzilus.
So we're talking about we're talking about Akudim. We're talking about the 3 sets of.
Yeah, Keser. Over here he's referring to it as Keser.
Yeah.
He's not going into the too much detail
Of the splitting.
in which level beyond Atzilus, but generally he's talking about the transcendent divine energy. The transcendent divine energy, from where the spheres ultimately stem, is pure unity. No delineation. No.
That's prior to Tzimtzum.
No, he's talking even la'achar tzimtzum. Even la'achar tzimtzum. So anyway, let's see how the Rebbe articulates it.
It all exists at the same time. That's the point. It's all happening at the same time, so it's a relevant dream.
But this is
we're
before,
delineating it in
but
time.
before you get any differentiation, it's just bullshit.
But it's all happening at the same time, so therefore it's all there anyway.
Let's see how the Rebbe articulates it.
Okay.
So certainly, according to the opinion that says that the divine energies are not pshutim, the divine energies of Atzilus already have what? Have some form of character. I'll just say this, Kevin, that what you're referring to is the giving force and the withholding force, right? Over here in Atzilus, what's the discussion? The discussion is, where does the character of the sphere come from? Does it already exist in the giving force, or it all comes within the withholding force? Right. The specific character of Chochmah, Chesed, and so on and so forth. So it's even further. Yeah. Yes, the Eir, that delineation, that this is a giving force, this is a withholding force, that's one sort of delineation. But then there's the specific character, Chesed, Chochmah, Gvura, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Does it already exist within the Eir in some form, or does it entirely come and is impressed upon the Eir by the Keli? Right? So he says, according to the opinion that the entire character, that the light, the divine energy already has some form of character, the question is, where does it come from? It's a giving, yes, granted, it's a giving force. It's the giving force. But its specific character of Chochmah, Chesed, Tiferes, and so on and so forth. Where does that come from? If it comes from a source that's poshut, a giving force, but a poshut giving force. Or pure. It's energy,
Right.
Pure energy.
Right. So where is the point? And how is one of differentiation?
Precisely. How does it all of a sudden develop a character of Chochmah, Chesed? If you say it's from the Keli, it's more understood. Okay, it doesn't come from the Eir, it comes from the Keli. But if the character is already within the Eir, where does that stem from? That's according to the opinion that says that the Eiris are Mitziyorim, they're not Pshutim. Even according to the opinion, says the Rebbe, that the lights are pure. The energies of Atzilus, the lights of Atzilus are pure. So then you would say, okay, what's the problem? So it comes from a source which is also pure, so it's reflected in the light that's pure. It says no. What happens in Atzilus? Once they're in Atzilus, the Keli has the ability to impress its character on the Eir. Beyond Atzilus, is that possible? It's not possible. That's why you need Atzilus. If it would be possible beyond Atzilus, you would have Atzilus there, right? Being that beyond Atzilus, even according to the opinion of what? That there is Pshutim, are pure. Beyond Atzilus, the lights as they stand in the transcendent at the transcendent level beyond Atzilus, beyond the world of emanation, cannot receive a character, an impression from a Keli, a specific impression. How is it possible that when the light comes down into the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation, it could suddenly attain the limitation and the character, the form, that the Keli impresses upon it? So the question is according to both opinions. Right? Says the Rebbe Inyan Hu. To explain it, thus. Shegam lifnei olam ha'atzilus b'shamayim mimal, yesh nei sheresh ha'eres ha'nikra b'shem havaya, v'sheresh ha'kelim ha'nikra b'shem elakim. Even at the level of b'shamayim mimal, beyond Atzilus, there is the root of the lights, called Yud Kei Vav Kei Havaya, and there is the root of the Kelim, the vessels, called Elakim. What does that mean? This will be understood from the concept of Rotzen, of will, in the person down here below. Rotzen, the level of Rotzen, will, this is a parable for the attribute of Keser. This is a bit of an answer to your question, reference to your point, Akiva. The Rebbe says, generally we're talking to the realms beyond Atzilus. He's not going now into Akudim, with this Nekudim or Akudim or all that. Rudim is Atzilus actually. So let's analyze desire, human desire. There is the internal aspect of the desire and there's the external aspect of the desire. What's the difference? The difference is right? In the external aspect of the desire, it is possible that the actions of the receiver, of the ones below, should affect change in that will, in that desire. Not so in Pnimius Ratzon. If you remember, we learned in the previous Mamar, the Rebbe was talking about the different levels of there's two modes in serving Hashem, limited and unlimited. Remember that we had a whole Mamar on that. And the Rebbe went through all the levels, starting from Maisa, going into Dibur, Machshava, Midis, Seichel, Ru'usa Deliba, right? And the Rebbe discussed that, how it's in the soul of the person, how it's in the spheres above. So the Rebbe was talking about Klippa, if you remember at one point, and he was talking about, he basically was saying that if you serve Hashem in a limited way, it could end up in wrong places. So therefore you always need to have that link to the unlimited level. Even in Keser, even in Rotzen, he said, right? In Keser, you have the Chitzenis and you have the Pnimis, the external and the internal. From the external, there could be Nikas Chitzenim. From the internal, there cannot be. From the external aspect of Keser, there could be seepage to the outside. From the internal one, they can't. So in other words, Pnimis Rotzen is, what's my end game? What do I want? The Chitzenis Rotzen is already are details within that desire, which is not necessarily reflected in their particular orbit, what the Pnimis Ratzon is, right? So, in Chitzenis Ratzon there could be a change. The Mekabel, the one below, my Ratzon could change. Like he said in the earlier Maimon, he said, Haleoch Esav Yaakov. Esav and Yaakov are brothers. Where is that? At the level of Chitzenis Ratzon. External aspect. Azay, it could be Azay. Maybe it's different. V'ohev es Yaakov es Esav Sanesi. it's Yaakov and not Esav, that's Pnimis Ratzon, that's not negotiable at that level. Similarly, in the person down here below, in Chitzesas, in external aspects, I could be influenced. I could change my will, I could change my desire, I mean, change what I want. Not this color, another color. If it's Pnimis Ratzon, that's not negotiable. That's what I want. That's the end game. So he says like this.
There's a different level of I that wants the different things. So it might, if we're talking
It's more
about
etzemdik, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you're talking about a much higher level. You're talking about more etzemdik. That's the point. So Dr. Razay, so what's the point? So this Pnimis Ratzon and Chetzenis Ratzon. The difference, the difference is Shebechetzenis Ratzon Shayach Shemayis HaMakabel Yifil B'Shenoim. In the external aspect of the Ratzon, of the person's of one's desire, it's possible that the actions of the receiver should affect change in the one that wants, in the desire of the person. The reason is because the particulars, the aspects of the external dimension of the desire are limited. They're measured and limited. If they're measured and limited, therefore, the makabel, the one that's below, right, has some meaning there. That a makabel hat dorten was zu sagen, as the Rebbe says in Yiddish. The makabel, the receiver, has something to say there. His opinion is meaningful. He's heard. He's discernible. When the makabel changes some facts, some aspects, then the desire will change. This is not the case when we talk about the internal aspect, the internal dimension of the desire. As you just said, Akiva, being that the pnimis ratzon, the internal aspect of the desire, is one with the essence of the person or the Eibishter in the moral. Just like the essence is beyond measure and limit, therefore, so insofar as the internal dimension of Ratzon is concerned, being that it's one with the Etzem, it also cannot be, it doesn't have any measure and limitation. So how does that reflect into the root of Oir, right? As he was just discussing earlier, this is the idea of the Oir, of the divine light, as it is at its root. So in other words, the Oir of Atzilus, the lights of Atzilus, as they are at their root, L'maylam Atzilus beyond Atzilus. No concept of measure and limit whatsoever is possible there.
Except the potential.
Hang on. He cannot even receive upon himself, accept upon himself, any measure and limit. Unlike the lights of Atzilus, the energies of Atzilus that do receive the measure and limit through the Kelim. Right? So that makes the question even stronger. If that's the case, how do the divine energies of Atzilus all of a sudden develop a character? They could receive a character and so on and so forth. Where does that come from? If at their root, at the level of Pnimis Ratzon.
It's because of the desire to create.
They have no limit, and they cannot even receive a limit. Where does it come from? Says the Rebbe. Why indeed, when they descend into the realm of Atzilus, they could receive measure and limit. Which measure and limit? The measure and limit that the Kelim impose upon them, impress upon them. Because it travels via the barrier of the curtain, which exists between the realms that are beyond the world of emanation to the world of emanation. And in addition to that, it's this is after it follows the preface of the first contraction, which was in a manner of total removal. What's the pshat? There's two types of contractions. In the process of Ishtalshalus, with the Eir becoming, shrinking down the potency, the power of the divine energies, as we descend in the chain order of creation, there are tzimtzumim, contractions. The light is contracted. But there are two types of tzimtzumim. There's tzimtzum b'derech miyut, a contraction in a manner of diminishing, and there's tzimtzum b'derech siluk. There is a contraction in a manner of removal. The first tzimtzum, the first contraction in the Eirin Sof Shalifnei Tzimtzum, divine energy before the tzimtzum, was a tzimtzum b'derech siluk, removal. What's the pshat? Let's try to look at it with a bit more higoy, a bit more seichel. The Eir, hoya Eirin Sof Mamar kol makom achol. Before the tzimtzum, the Eir filled the entire void. In other words, there was no concept of anything else other than the Eibishter himself and his Hoya hu shmoi belvad. When the Eirin Sof was removed, siluk, completely, and to use the terminology of the Arizal, v'nishar cholol l'makom panui, and what remained was a hollow and an empty void, metaphorically speaking, notionally speaking, right? Come inside.
Yeah, come.
Right? So what happened? And then what happened? Hashem was mamshich, the Eirin Sof back into the cholol l'makom panui, back into, what was the point? If he returned the Eirin Sof back into the cholol l'makom panui, to use the terminology of the Arizal, what was the point of the exercise? What changed? You removed it and you brought it back. You drill a hole and then you fill it. What did you accomplish? So Chassidus explains that once the Eir, before the Tzimtzum, Hayahu Shmei Bavad, right? There was no notion of anything else. There was no notion of a world, of the possibility of anything else. Once you remove the Eir, V'nisha Chol L'makom Panui, metaphorically speaking, and you then draw back down the Eirin Sof, all of a sudden the Eirin Sof comes into a new reality, so to speak. The Eirin Sof suddenly realizes, wait, I'm coming into a place where I wasn't before, kaviyochel, so to speak. In other words, what is accomplished through the tzimtzum and through the re-entry of the Eir? The Eir suddenly realizes there is the possibility that I may need to go and illuminate something which wasn't there before. That's step one. That's the accomplishment of tzimtzum b'derech siluk. What's the parsa between Eilamis, a curtain? What's the barrier of a curtain? The barrier of a curtain is more than just a tzimtzum. It withholds. And therefore what comes through the barrier on the other side is what's called Eir Shel Tulda, to use the terminology of Kabbalah Chassidus. It is a derivative. Right? So, in other words, what's the point? We're going to have to start davening in a minute. So, to get to the point that the Rebbe is trying to make, yes, if it would be normal progression from the Eir before Atzilus into Atzilus without any other factors interfering, you can't get from something pure, something that suddenly has a character. It doesn't work. So it can't come from its source. And that's exactly the point. It doesn't come from there. Where does it come from? From the parsa. Being that it goes through the parsa, this curtain, this barrier that causes a change, a switch in the Eir, it becomes an Eir Shel Tulda, a derivative light, it suddenly takes on something of some sort of character. So in answer to the question, where does it come from, the character, even according to whether it's the Shita of Eretz Pshutim or Eretz Mitzyorim, whatever the case is, right? It indeed doesn't come from its source, it comes from something secondary, something outside of the Eir that impresses that causes that to develop in the Eir. Then the Rebbe is going to move on to the next stage, and he's going to explain how Havaya Velikim Kul Echad, even at that level. Leave it at that.
It's amazing here that plan A.
What do you mean?
Not plan B. It's like what you have to plan that. Also, it's amazing that the parts that they're not only stopping light getting through, it's also creating a reality after itself.
Correct. That's the whole point. But that's the whole point of Havaya Velikim. They're all barriers. They're withholding. They're regulating. But what's the whole point? In order to allow it to be revealed, in order to allow it to function. So Havaya Velikim Kul Echad. That's the basic concept.